So imagine this, you're a parent, and you start noticing um, maybe your kid isn't quite hitting those milestones like other kids their age.
Hmm.
Maybe they're having trouble communicating or social situations seem tougher for them, and you just yet feel it deep down like something's not quite right.
Right.
And that's the reality for so many families starting their journey with early intervention for autism. And honestly, it's a journey it's loaded with emotion right from the start.
It really is.
We're diving into an article today by John Hookway. He's the CEO of Medic Signal. It's called Top 4 Challenges Parents Face in Early Autism Intervention. He just published it today, actually, September 18th, 2024. And let me tell you, he gets really real about what these families go through. And this is so important, he doesn't leave you hanging. He lays out these really clear strategies to help parents navigate everything.
I like that.
So are you ready to unpack this?
I am. Let's do it.
Let's start with challenge number 1, the diagnostic maze.
Oh, the diagnostic maze. Yeah, that is such a powerful way to describe this stage because it truly can feel like you're just, lost, stumbling around in the dark. And it's not even just the long wait list to see specialists. Although, I mean, that is a massive hurdle on its own, let's be honest. It's the emotional roller coaster that comes with all the uncertainty. Imagine waiting months for an appointment, and during that whole time, you're hoping for the best, but also dreading this diagnosis that could, change everything for your family.
It's like holding your breath for months on end.
Yeah.
And in that time, you're constantly second-guessing yourself. Did I miss the signs? Should I have, fought harder, pushed the pediatrician more? Hookway really gets that parental guilt. It's another layer of stress on top of everything else.
And that delay, like he points out, it translates to lost time. Precious time that could have been spent on early intervention, which we know is crucial. When we talk about autism, early intervention is key. The sooner a child can get those therapies, the support tailored to them, the better their chances of developing those skills, really reaching their full potential.
So let's say you're a parent listening, and you feel that knot in your stomach, that instinct that something might be different. What can you do? How do you navigate this maze and actually get your child the help they need?
Well, Hookway, he outlines several strategies, but I think the most important one is this. Trust your gut. If you have concerns, even if they seem small, don't hesitate. Talk to your pediatrician. Ask for that referral to a specialist. And be persistent. Don't give up.
You've got to be your child's advocate.
100%. You are their voice in all of this. And while you're trying to figure out all those specialists and assessments, remember there are resources out there to help. Look into financial assistance. There might be grants or state-funded programs, maybe even nonprofit organizations that can help lighten that load a little.
That's where those support networks can be so crucial.
Essential. Connecting with other families who get it, who understand exactly what you're going through. It's like finding a lifeline. Just knowing you're not alone in this makes all the difference.
It's such a relief to finally have that diagnosis, to be able to put a name to what you've been seeing. But then it's like, wait, what now?
Right.
You've made it through the diagnostic maze. You've got those early intervention services lined up. And suddenly, it's like this tidal wave of information crashes over you.
It's true. It's like someone hands you this giant puzzle, pieces everywhere, and you're just supposed to put it together with no picture to guide you.
Oh, gosh.
And not only that, but you're also figuring out how to use all those puzzle pieces as you go. This is Hookway's second challenge, becoming an intervention specialist practically overnight.
Because it's not like you can just show up for the therapy sessions and call it a day, right?
Right.
You have to weave all those strategies into your daily life, become this expert on your child's needs.
Exactly. Imagine this for a second. You're learning about applied behavior analysis, ABA, which focuses on how behaviors work, using positive reinforcement to teach new skills. Then you've got speech therapy helping your child communicate better, and occupational therapy for those fine motor skills, the sensory processing stuff.
Wow, so much.
It is a lot to wrap your head around.
I feel like I need a glossary just to keep up with all the acronyms, let alone the actual approaches themselves. And every kid's different, so something that works for one might not work for another.
Sure.
It's overwhelming, to say the least.
Absolutely. This is where I think Hookway's advice is so spot on. He talks about the importance of partnering up, really working with your child's therapists and educators. They're your guides, your mentors through this whole thing.
It's about open communication,
Yeah.
right? Asking questions, not being afraid to say, hey, I don't get this, or this isn't working for us.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to speak up. Remember, you're all on the same team with the same goal, helping your child thrive. And one of the biggest keys in early intervention is consistency. It's about making those therapeutic strategies part of your everyday routines, weaving them into your child's life naturally.
Which I'm guessing is a lot easier said than done.
It can be.
This reminds me of that story Hookway told about the child who would just melt down every time they had to go to the grocery store. Turned out it wasn't the kid being difficult. They were completely overwhelmed, sensory overload from all the lights, the crowds, the noise.
It's a perfect example of what we were talking about, understanding the why behind the behavior. Once the parents understood that their child wasn't trying to be difficult, that the sensory input was just too much, they could actually put strategies in place to help.
Like noise-canceling headphones or going to the store at less crowded times.
Yeah.
Simple things, but they make a world of difference. But how do you even start to crack that code to figure out what's triggering those behaviors in the first place?
Yeah. Well, that leads us right to Hookway's third challenge, decoding the behavior code. It's safe to say this often feels like the most daunting challenge of all.
Decoding the behavior code. It's like something out of a spy movie. You've got this super important message, but you can't even understand it. Except in this case, the message is coming from your own kid.
And the stakes couldn't be higher. Because those behaviors, the meltdowns, the tantrums, even just the repetitive movements, it's not just about what you see on the surface. Those behaviors, they're a window into your child's inner world, their way of communicating what they need. Sensory overload, even just plain old frustration, but they just don't have the words.
They're trying to tell us something, but they're using what they've got their behavior.
Exactly. And as parents, it's not our job to shut those behaviors down, but to learn how to, translate them. What's the message behind what they're doing?
Which takes so much patience and empathy and maybe a little detective work thrown in there too. So where do you even begin?
Well, Hookway talks about this. It's important to remember that challenging behaviors, they're often a form of communication. A child with autism, they might not be able to say, hey, all this noise is too much for me right now.
Right.
But they might cover their ears or completely shut down or even have a meltdown.
So it's about changing our perspective.
Yeah.
Instead of asking what's wrong with my child, it's what is my child trying to tell me?
Yes,
That-
exactly. Behavior is information. And once you start to see it like that, you can start to put those pieces together, understand your child's needs and what triggers them.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? How do you crack the code, so to speak?
Well, Hookway has some really good strategies. First, he talks about observation. Just start by paying close attention to your child's behavior patterns. What happens right before a meltdown? Are there specific things that set them off, like certain sounds or textures, maybe even certain lights?
You become a detective in your own home.
Exactly. Keep a journal, even just jot down what you're noticing. And as you start to identify those triggers, you can start coming up with ways to minimize them or avoid them altogether.
Like those noise-canceling headphones we talked about, or dimming the lights, or even just creating a quiet space where a child can go to calm down.
Exactly. And remember those behavior support plans. This is where they're so helpful. A good plan, something you create with your child's therapist, it's like a roadmap for understanding and responding to those behaviors in a positive way before they even happen.
So you're not just reacting in the moment, you're setting up an environment that actually helps prevent those meltdowns in the first place.
Yes. And as you get better at decoding those behaviors, you'll find those meltdowns, they happen less often and aren't as intense. But, and that's important to remember, even with the best plan, there are going to be challenges.
Of course.
And that takes us to Hookway's fourth and final challenge, which is huge when we're talking about a child's well-being, and that's nurturing social and emotional growth.
This one feels big. It's about our kids building real relationships, figuring out how to navigate the social world, developing that emotional intelligence they'll need to really thrive.
You said it. Social and emotional development are fundamental. But for children with autism, these can be really tough. Imagine struggling to understand those unspoken social rules or express your feelings so that other people understand. It can be so isolating.
And frustrating not just for the child, but for everyone around them, too. It's like you're all speaking different languages.
That's a great way to put it, and it highlights why it's so important to build those bridges of understanding. So how do we do that? How do we help our kids develop those essential social and emotional skills? Well, thankfully, a lot of what Hookway suggests builds on what we've already talked about.
So we're not starting from scratch, which is good news.
Not at all. A lot of those strategies, like seeing behavior as communication, creating those structured environments, using visual supports, those are all key in fostering social and emotional growth, too.
So it's about layering, building on that foundation we've already started.
Exactly. And one of the best tools we have is so simple: play.
Play. Like just letting kids be kids, use their imaginations.
Exactly. Because play is about so much more than just having fun. It's how kids learn, it's how they make sense of the world, and how they develop those social and emotional skills.
It's their language.
Exactly. And for children with autism, play is this safe space where they can practice things like taking turns, sharing, working together.
And parents are such a huge part of that,
Yeah.
right? Not just watching, but actively engaging.
100%. Get down on their level. Play pretend. Model those social skills. Offer some guidance and encouragement, of course. You are your child's first and most important playmate.
That makes me think about that emotional coaching idea that Hookway mentioned. It's about helping kids understand and manage their own emotions, right?
Exactly. It's about giving them the words to describe how they're feeling: frustrated, overwhelmed, excited, whatever it is, and then teaching them healthy ways to cope with those feelings.
So instead of stop yelling, it's, hey, I see that you're angry. Let's take some deep breaths together.
Exactly. And over time, as kids learn these emotional regulation skills, it makes a huge difference in how they handle social situations, how they build relationships, how they advocate for themselves. It's like we're giving them this toolkit for life.
We covered a lot today. We talked about the diagnostic maze, becoming intervention specialists, decoding behavior, and nurturing social and emotional growth. That's a lot for any parent. What's the most important thing you want our listeners to take away from John Hookway's article?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. While early autism intervention can be so challenging, you are not alone. There are resources, there are strategies, there's a whole community out there ready to support you and your child.
And those small victories along the way, those count too.
Absolutely. Celebrate them all, because those little wins, they fuel the bigger journey.
They really do. Hookway's article focused on the parent's experience, but it got me thinking, what about the bigger picture? How can we as a society better support families going through early autism intervention? It's something I hope we all keep thinking about. And with that, we're wrapping up this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep those light bulb moments coming.